LinkedIn, we are going to fire up your Monday.
With Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
I am Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
Over the next hour of this Master Connection series, we will take a deep dive into the different ways to connect and network effectively.
See us and hear us right now. So LinkedIn, we are on here. We're getting ready.
Hear from experts along with Steve Spiro, who went from being shy and introverted to the Master Connector.
Right, LinkedIn. All right. I'm excited. We are back. I was telling everybody that was tuning in for Biz Dev Live this morning. The pink shirt is back. I've been holding off on putting it on, but it's back on again. And here we go. Master Connection series is on. I'm going to introduce my main man, Steve Spiro, a COVID survivor. He's just getting over some sickness. So pardon the throat stuff today, but we are back. And luckily we're still live, which is a good thing. And we're excited to be here. Let us know where you are viewing from in the chat. You make this show what it is, your comments, your engagement. We have some incredible folks on. We're going to be talking about emotional intelligence today, the importance it plays in our everyday life and networking. That's what this show is all about, being the light, expanding our network. And without further ado, our main man, master of ceremonies here, host of our show, Mr. Steve Spiro. Steve Spiro is a martial arts black belt and a master networker. He has moved from being a shy, introverted kid to the master connector he is today. Steve Spiro began his business career by starting an advertising company in NYC. He had an incredibly fulfilling career and experience in advertising and marketing, but eventually pivoted to the technology industry. Today, he is a certified customer communications consultant with Quadient, where he consults and mentors companies to help them find more effective ways to connect with their customers. Steve Spiro believes in the power of mentorship, growing oneself through self-development and continuing to create meaningful connections through building a large network. Welcome to the stage, the Master Connector himself, Steve Spiro.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. And yeah, COVID hit me hard for 2 weeks, but I am back. I'm alive. I'm in the land of the living, and I'm excited to be here with you folks. So, hey, it's Steve Spiro, the Master Connector. Cameron and I really appreciate you tuning in. We're here now again every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we come at you with engaging content on how you too can be a master connector. During this Master Connection series, each week our goal is to gather subject matter experts to impart their wisdom on us. Welcome to the show. And I'm blessed to have my co-host Cameron Toth, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain here. Cameron is the host and founder of Biz Dev Live. Cameron founded Toth Event Staffing in 2011. Toth Event Staffing is a hospitality company providing staff to caterers, cafeterias, and catering companies in Westchester and New York City. Biz Dev Live was founded in 2020 with it just restarted up again today. Biz Dev Live takes Cameron's entrepreneurship experience and combines it with his passion for helping young people and business-minded professionals. Cameron Toth's mission in life is increasing access to education and opportunity for all people. So again, I'll turn it back to my host, the man who makes all the magic happen, Mr. Cameron Toth.
Thank you, Steve. So listen, we love your comments. I can't tell you how much we love your comments. Keep letting us know where you're tuning in from. We always love, even if you've told us before, you know what it is. I know it's been a while since we've been on, been a few weeks, but this is the deal. We love hearing from you. Alan Greenwald checking in, Ann Small checking in from North Lake, Texas. All right. Johnny Richard from Kimberly, Wisconsin. We got Donna Dietrich from Philadelphia. We got Brian Morrison checking in from Dallas, Texas. And really today, I really want you guys to let us know about emotional intelligence, what do you think will help you succeed more, your IQ or your emotional IQ? And hopefully through the show, we'll figure out the answer to that question, or to see if your answer changes to that question. So let me get into introducing our experts that are here with us. And we got more people checking in. Luann, thanks for Richfield, Connecticut. Ruthie Harris from Buffalo, New York. Mama Spiro from Poughkeepsie. Brian Tao from Toronto. Steve Crowley from Washington, D.C. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us. All right, without further ado here, Josh Zepess. All right, Josh, in a world where dreams are crushed, souls are forgotten, and rust never sleeps, Josh Zepess, the identity archaeologist, is on a mission to ensure talented solopreneurs turn every business first impression into a second impression where the sale happens by raising their ROC, return on conversation, so they can profit more without grinding more. After decades on the corporate farm as a shy, introverted engineer, he realized that the cubicle could no longer contain him. So he escaped. After a rocky road through entrepreneurship in the financial and gym industries, he finally stopped ignoring his genius and plays in it profitably every day. When he's not digging for business gold, he flies airplanes, brews beer, runs long-distance obstacle course races like this coming weekend in Mexico City, and creates literary art. Welcome to the stage, the amazing Josh Zepess.
Thank you. Absolute honor to be here. Honored to be able to share time with everybody, and looking forward to a fantastic conversation.
Appreciate you, Josh. We're going to fly right over to Vered. Vered Lerner is an award-winning expert leader and speaking, specializing in personal, professional, and business development. She is featured on the Brains 500 Global List of 2020, a list of 500 companies, entrepreneurs, influential leaders, and business owners recognized for their entrepreneurial success, achievements, or dedication to help others. Vered is the CEO and founder of BizTance Services, a full-service consulting and management agency delivering business services globally. Vered loves helping people find and refine their passion, discover their why, and pursue it to the max. There is nothing better than seeing individuals work on themselves, improve their relationships, and live the life they have always dreamed of. She also loves working with aspiring business owners, entrepreneurs, and companies, showing them strategies, providing options, and bringing their vision to crystal clarity and ultimate success. Please welcome to the stage the amazing Vered Lerner.
Thank you so much for having me on today. So excited to be here with Josh and with all of you. I think it's such an important topic we're touching on, and we're excited to kick off your series. So let's get it going.
Excellent. All right. So we got everybody here on the stage here. We're going to jump right into our questions of the day. What is your understanding of emotional intelligence? I'm going to ask Steve to briefly start us off. I know his voice, we're all hanging with you. If you're in the comments, root for Steve here. He's trying to get it all going here with the vocal cords and all that. But what is your understanding of emotional intelligence? And just a reminder, my expert guest, just let me know who wants to jump in first in the comments there in the private chat, and I will get you on. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, again, glad to be here. Glad to be on the land of the living, along with incredible guests and panelists here. And we also got Mr. Tim Colson backstage, and appreciate you, Tim, being the man here with us. But it's there he is. There he is, Mr. Tim Colson. A little you've got to be always ready, Tim. Anyway, it's so emotional intelligence. I think it's one of those things that I think everyone's got a different take on it. But for me, in thinking about it a little bit over the weekend, it's, to me, some of it's street smarts. It's just, it's the things you kind of pick up along the way. It's sort of instinct. It's things that, you've learned and areas, and, there's a lot of smart people out there, but it's funny. A lot of them don't necessarily have, or I won't say a lot of them. Some of the people I'm thinking about, they might be super intelligent, but when it comes to emotional intelligence, maybe not so much, right? So I'm curious to hear what all the panelists have to say, because I'm I'm still learning. I'm always growing. That's one thing about me. I feel like you're either a tomato that's ripening or a tomato that's dying, and I always want to be that ripening tomato and always learning. So, but I'm very curious to hear what everyone has to say. But that's my take on it. I think it's sort of a combination of street smarts, some sort of instinct. That's my take.
Yeah, I know Vered wanted to jump in. Go ahead, Vered.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, like you said, everyone has a different take on what emotional intelligence is, but really it is understanding yourself and then understanding others and being able to fuse the two. So it's an understanding of relationships as well. And when we get into the deep parts of emotional intelligence, we get into a lot of the deeper rooted issues and figuring out, your whys and your triggers and all of that. But it's really a full understanding, like you called it street smarts, but it's a full understanding of the world and how you relate to it. But really, it starts with you. That's why it's all about the emotional parts. And as the show continues, we'll get into what that really means. But yeah, it's knowing how to handle yourself, how to manage yourself, how to understand yourself. Because if you don't, you can never relate to others, and you can't have those effective communications. You can't have those great relationships, right? You can't succeed at work because you're always on the defensive, or you're always, some people wonder, why am I always getting into trouble? Why am I always having issues with people? Why am I always losing friends? All of these things are tied to emotional intelligence.
I love that. Go ahead, Josh. I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, 100%. I second what Vered and everyone else is saying. And one of the misconceptions I think about emotional intelligence is people think it's about being emotional. And really, at a base level, it's about helping and making emotions work for you and not let them work against you. And that's just kind of the layman. Now, I work with professionals and entrepreneurs, so I'm going to give you a business definition. For me, emotional intelligence is the other half of the success equation. Because like Steve said, we always talk about IQ as being important for success, and it is. But there's this other entire half called EQ, called emotional intelligence, that we need both of those for ultimate success. Because even in business, guess what? Businesses are run by people, and people build relationships, and that requires emotional intelligence. And we can dive deeper into that on the business side for sure. But that's my view of it.
I love that. And anyone who's really confused about the topic of IQ versus EIQ, I recently discovered a show. I may be super late to it, or maybe you don't know about it, but Young Sheldon, which is a spinoff from, I don't even know the name of the other show. I just found Young Sheldon on HBO Max. And Young Sheldon is this kind of super genius kid. And then he's got a sister who's not a super genius, like test-wise, school-wise, but she can read the room and she knows what people are thinking. Young Sheldon doesn't. So you get that really great contrast of street smarts, emotional smarts versus IQ in drastic, you see the comparison between the two really, really live and up front. All right. So I'm going to dive into our second question here. So let's see if I can pull my screen. All right. So second question is emotional intelligence something you're born with, or can it be cultivated? Steve, you want to just jump real briefly in, and then my guest will let me know who wants to jump in first. Go ahead.
Sure. If you're born with it, I would say you're blessed. But I think, listen, when we're born as a baby, I think we're a complete blank slate, and I think that we learn things. Just like we learn how to ride a bike and we learn how to, tie our shoes and all those things we do as kids. So I think it's a learned skill. I think some people might have a little bit better instincts than others, but that could probably be based on environmental. So I think it's something that you could learn and develop. I don't think it's something that you have to be. It's, you're gifted or you're not gifted. So that's my take on it. I'm curious what everyone else has to say.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm as a father, I have a few kids in the house, and so you get to see this like nature versus nurture thing really, really live and up close. And I think some people just naturally, they can gravitate towards the ability to read emotions in others. whether I don't know how much that's naturally learned, but I definitely see difference in my kids. They're all in the same home, getting a lot of the same inputs, but there's definitely different levels of ability in the room. Go ahead, Barrett.
Okay, so I do agree with what has been said, although I have to say that some people are born more inclined to have a deeper emotional intelligence, and a lot of us have to work really hard at cultivating it. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters what kind of home you're born into, what kind of culture you come from, and again, the things that that culture allows. So when you have boys, for instance, who grow up in a culture where they're, you know, told crying is for babies, or, you know, boys don't cry and things like that, they're basically taught to suppress their feelings and their emotions. But when you give them the kind of nurturing environment where they're able to express themselves, they're able to feel every kind of emotion, then they can connect on a deeper level. And so a lot of it has to do with what we're allowed to do, what society expects of us, but also to understand that we are able to basically explore who we are as people and to get a feel for what it is that we want to do in this world. So yeah, it can definitely be cultivated. Everybody can learn emotional intelligence. It's not something you're necessarily born with, like an IQ. An IQ is something that you have a number, you're assigned a number if you're tested, and that's it. You can sometimes, you know, learn by memorizing or whatever. EQ is something that can be developed. You can grow into your own skin. You can use it in different ways. And again, the more you use it, like practice makes perfect. And we always have to work at it, because no matter how emotionally intelligent we are, there's always room for growth.
Love that. Always room for growth, right? That's what this show is all about. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I definitely agree so far with what everyone said. However, I'm going to go a little different direction. I really think we're all born with it. And what I mean by that, it's that emotional intelligence is the most natural thing in the world, because really at its core, it's just being human. And we're all born human, at least I hope. That's the idea. So I agree with what Vered said, that we're conditioned out of it. So we're born human, we're born able to build relationships, we're born able to connect with other people. And then all of a sudden we're told, keep your head down. Oh, honey, you're no good at that. You know, boys don't cry, all these things. And we suppress our emotional intelligence. We suppress it, we put it away. And I'm talking from experience, because I was that shy, negative, skeptical, introverted engineer for 20 years after growing up like this. And so I had to learn how to forget all the conditioning. I had to undo that. And I think that's kind of where we are at. So I think we have it, we're conditioned out of it. And then if we're willing to forget the rules, if we're willing to forget this professionalism that we're taught, I think emotional intelligence and building those connections it can return as the most natural thing to us. And it's not as hard as people think.
I love that. And this question from Roland is at the heart of what we're trying to kind of do today with this show. I talk to students in the college and career mentor role and preparation role. I talk about how important communication is. And I would say IQ and your ability to communicate do not necessarily go in hand, even though people are going to sort of judge you, basically say, oh, this person is an intelligent person based on the words you're using, how you actually speak, right? People are going to judge your IQ on your communication, but you don't necessarily need to be all that smart to communicate well. So there is a separation between the two. Roland is asking, how do you know when you have emotional intelligence? And this is great, because I think maybe we can set this up for folks maybe that are looking to maybe fill in a gap, maybe that they didn't know that they had. So the other side of this is, how do you know you aren't really paying attention? Because I definitely understood what you were talking about, Josh, because we are built as machines coming out of the womb, all of these different senses to sort of read the room and to read the expressions of our parents and our siblings and people out in the world. We're built with all these tools, but it definitely seems like some people aren't using them. So who wants to, I don't know who wants to jump in on that first, but how do you know when you have emotional intelligence?
I could jump in. I know I'm not using the chat, but I'll just jump in. I never like the awkward silence, so I'm the guy that always wants to jump in. But so the number one, I just want to say something, and not to be contrary, Josh, but I think that depending upon, there are people that are on the spectrum, right? And more than likely those folks, their emotional intelligence in some cases are probably very, very low. And it just may have to do with the way their brain is wired and maybe the chemicals that are, shooting off in their brain and all those things. And, not to be critical of the person, they're probably amazing people, but in that world. But I think, how do you know when you have emotional intelligence? I think you know that you can, some things that I feel like you can read the room, right? You get a sense of, you almost kind of feel like you get an instinct on where a person is at. There's just things, there's cues that come at you when you have it that allow you to realize that you have, beyond just the normal kind of way you are, right? There's a lot of people that are, and I was like this. I probably, my emotional intelligence earlier on in my adulthood and certainly my childhood was probably zero. And I just, I didn't know how to read people. I didn't know how to understand, where people are at. And I've learned to grow that skill and become more attuned to it. So again, how do you know when you have it? I think you'll find yourself to be better with people in general, right? I think the better you are with people, the better clue that is that you have emotional intelligence. People that have a tendency, I know Josh and I share in that shy introverted aspect of how we were initially. And I think as we've grown as people and grown out of that to a degree, although it's always going to be part of the instinct, I think that emotional intelligence has grown for us. So that's my take.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's really important to remember that an indication of a lower emotional intelligence is, like I said before, when you ask yourself those questions about your relationships and about your success and how you're able to handle yourself, how you respond and react to situations. We have to govern ourselves accordingly, no matter where we are, whether we are at school or at work or at home or grocery shopping, wherever we are, we encounter other people. And so when you're saying, yes, you need to be able to read the room, but you're also able to understand where others are coming from. So when you're up maybe for a performance review at work, or when you are reviewing somebody else, it's important to know how to ask the right questions, how to respond properly, how to see where you can take it next. Why does one person do really well and the other one doesn't? How come, this person is getting a promotion, this person is losing their job, this person is being demoted, or, getting a raise? It's all about your ability to interact, to get your point across, and to be able to navigate through life in a way where other people see you in a positive light, where you're able to make an impact and a difference with your empathy and sympathy, and just being able to be yourself around others. But again, that takes a lot of, control, a lot of self-control, a lot of self-management. And so when you don't have that and you see that things are falling apart around you, maybe that's an indication that you need to work on certain areas of your emotional intelligence.
Love that. I'm trying to get myself off mute here. Love that. Josh, I want you to jump in here, but I also want to tell the audience, we have lots of questions coming in. We have our experts here on stage, but we are not the only experts by any means. Please, if you got answers to these questions, help us out. Jump into these comments, answer some of these questions. I love all the different tidbits. There's not enough time to get to every piece of the emotional IQ conversation. So we appreciate your help in jumping in, and we'll definitely get to some more of these questions here. But we love them coming in, keep them coming in, and help us out. We'll talk to each other. A lot of people on the live chat, so keep the conversation going. Go ahead, Josh.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to give a couple different answers. One, how do you know when you have IQ, a high IQ? You see it in results, right? You see it in the results of whatever you're doing, whether it be a test or your business. EQ is kind of the same way, where you see it around you. It's how easy are your conversations? So how well are you able to build those relationships? And I want to give a slightly different answer. Also, it's when you give up on trying to be perfect. Perfectionism and trying to be perfect, and the ego and the facade, everything we do to try and look good is actually, it's not human, because humans are not perfect. So when we stop trying to be perfect, when we're okay being ourselves, when we're not as nervous as in a conversation with somebody, or we're not so offended when we're in a conversation with someone or by a comment, when it's not about how we look, but it's more about how that other person looks and how the other person feels. When we hit that empathy point, like Vered said, that's a sign of very, very high emotional intelligence. And then even scientifically speaking, so is self-deprecation. When you're just okay being yourself, with all your faults, with all your greatness, with everything that's part of you that makes you, when you're okay showing up as that and not having to be over professional, not having to put up the facade, not having to paint the perfect picture, that's when you're at that high level of emotional intelligence.
I love that. I want to just add one thing too here, and we can all kind of pinpoint this and sort of talk to this, right? The importance of good communication and asking questions. In the comments here, there's been a couple things around culture. Steven's comment here, what do you guys think about emotional intelligence being tied to the idea of being? Rousseau famously said that I think, therefore I am. And I was wondering which Enlightenment philosopher you would use to describe the importance of emotional intelligence. And I think, you get the Socratic method, right? You talk about great philosophers, great, thinkers and everything. The idea that you can get to the bottom of things if you ask questions. And we've talked a lot about it here in terms of growing a larger network and being a good networker. The idea that by asking questions, you can get to know people and get answers in a better way. I don't know who wants to jump in. Feel free to just jump right on in.
So I'm gonna just say something. So one of my favorite philosophers is the famous Mike Tyson, and he said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So anyway, I just want to put a little. I'm not a big philosophy guy, so I couldn't quote who.
Love it.
But just to add a little humor to this, so.
You got to use the Mike Tyson voice, though, Steve. You got to get the Mike Tyson voice going.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. By the way, that's a great quote. I absolutely love that quote. I've used it many times. So fundamentally, I believe we all have the right answers. We're just not asking the right questions. So I think that's spot on about the questions. And if somebody wants to dive deep, he's not a philosopher, but he's a 20th century psychologist. It's Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of human needs. And he has these things called D values and B values. And D values are deficiency values. We just got the basic needs of survival, right? We have to eat, we need shelter, all these things. But until we take care of those, we can't achieve the B values, which is love and self-actualization ultimately. And I always think of Maslow because he describes emotional intelligence perfectly in his description of this. So that would be a recommendation if anybody wants to dive into that. It's fun stuff.
Love it. Vera, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I can quote, so many people, philosophers, psychologists, coaches, so many people that influenced me, but I don't like to do that because I think we're all so unique. And by doing that, I think people stick with it. They take, especially the ones who follow you, and I know this because they come back to me and say, oh, I remember when you said, and I don't want them to just remember that one thing. And I think for everyone, it's important to just, figure out your why. That is the big thing for me. When you figure out your why, the how will come after. But understanding, what drives you, why you want to get to where you want to go. and then figure out how to get there. So I always work with my clients backwards. So we look at their goals, we look at why they want to be there, and then, okay, so if I'm here and I need to be there, what do I need to do? How do I bridge those gaps? How do I, close that space? And what problems do I counter along the way? So when you're looking at those hurdles, those obstacles, those are usually the ones that you need to work on to improve your emotional intelligence, because those are the things that you're getting stuck on and you need to get unstuck.
Love that. I think a lot of people get stuck in the weeds on the communication and emotional intelligence thing. You can see a lot of people, and there's lots of examples in the media of people not having a good a read of the room. For example, we recently had a governor of New York that's gotten a lot of trouble of not having any emotional intelligence when it comes to women. We see those kind of things oftentimes. They disconnect the idea of public servant versus responsible human being, and that's not something that you can do. I think that we all have to be responsible to each other and treat each other well. I know with my company, I'm very people focused. And so reading people, being considerate, we're in, times right now with COVID that being sensitive, we were talking about it as a group before we jumped on because of Steve's recent experience with it, but there's so many people that have come down with COVID, dealing with prolonged effects, and like being sensitive to that, not just saying, oh, because you hear something in the political spectrum and you just take that soundbite and move forward with it, but really being sensitive and understanding that people have lots of different experiences and come to wherever you are from lots of different places, and being really sensitive to that because you haven't lived in their shoes. So let me take a moment, be patient, be calm, and think around the situation. I was putting in the comments before, being a good emotionally intelligent person probably means you're going to be calm. You're not going to be I always forget the wrong word in the situation, but reactive versus responsive. I don't want to react in the sense of I'm hitting with the hammer, I'm getting angry, I'm calm, I'm processing, and then I think through my response, right? That is something that you're going to come off seeming like you have a much higher level of emotional intelligence than if you just are immediately responding. We talk about it all the time with the emails. You get an email that you don't like. You don't have to respond immediately. You can take a moment. You can process it. You may not even need to respond at all. You may need to just pick up the phone, right? There's lots of ways to deal with these things that are going to allow you, and Susan Castelli saying in the comments, empathy, right? Having empathy with people, such a big deal. So I don't know if you guys want to jump in on any of that, but what are some ways emotional intelligence has benefited you personally, and others around you? What are the things that you've seen that emotional intelligence has benefited you in your life and people around you?
So for me, I think, just understanding who I am, it completely changed my life. And I think we all go through stages where we question, do I need to be here? Is this really meant for me? Or we get into certain situations that we're not happy in. And this is where that comfort zone thing comes in, right? We talk about it all the time. We learn and we grow by getting out of our comfort zone. That comfort zone is actually suppressing our emotional intelligence and our intelligence, period. I think when we're allowing ourselves to just settle for something that we know we can grow out of, we can get out of, and we can be better internally, externally, and just, making an impact on the world. We talk about ways to lead, and we start with leadership at home, right? Well, whether we have siblings, children, parents, whatever. And then we're influential in our social circle, and then we get out into the business world, and how do we leave an impact there? I like to say that, we leave little, sparkles behind wherever we go. Make yourself memorable. But how do you do that? You have to do it by connecting with others. If you're not connecting with others, if you're not effectively communicating with them, then you're never going to be memorable. And so I think to get that inner peace, which you were alluding to get that sort of tranquil state where you're not necessarily, responding and reacting from an emotional place, because emotional intelligence is about knowing how to control your emotions. Doesn't mean that you don't have them or you do have them or yours are stronger than mine. It just means, how am I controlling them? So when you're able to control yourself, yes, you do appear more intelligent, obviously, but you're also able to influence others in that way. And I think that that is a big part of why people want to improve their emotional intelligence, is because they want to succeed. And through their success, they're also, leading others to lead the same type of lifestyle or mentality, or, just to be in a better environment, period.
Love that.
So 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Who else wants to jump in here?
Sounds like
I was going to share EQ. I had EQ back when I was in corporate America for 20 years, and I didn't even know it. It actually blossomed my career because I was the one person, instead of sending emails, instead of just making calls, I would actually show up at other people's cubicles. And I didn't know I was doing this on purpose. I was just curious about how their day's going. And then I had, let's say, a hot job from a customer that had to go through the fabrication area fast. And I would say, look, this customer really needs this really fast. What can I do to help you get this through the fabrication area faster? I always just came from a place of service. And I guess I was doing the right thing because it worked, but I didn't know it as EQ. Back then, I'm old enough that we didn't have EQ. That wasn't a class you took in corporate America. But more recently, it actually has truly saved my life, because one of the things I realized, and this is what I help people with, most of what we sell, if you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur, you're probably selling a commodity, right? Your product or service can probably be duplicated very easily. But the one thing that can't be duplicated is you, your story, your mission, your values, your stand, the reason you get out of bed in the morning. That cannot be duplicated. And that's the beautiful part of EQ. If you bring yourself to your business, if you bring your authenticity, if you're just a human being, it will separate you. I promise it will separate you from everyone else in your industry, no matter how crowded your industry is. I don't care if it's insurance or real estate or whatever you're doing. It's the one thing that can help you stand out and bring that brand to the forefront. So EQ is a lifesaver for anybody in business.
Love that. I know Steve wanted to jump in. Go.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, how's it affected you, and, good or bad, or people around you? And I remember back in the day, my business partner, when I had my advertising company, he sent me to Dale Carnegie course. He said, I got some good news. Because I was the kind of guy that, if you said something that I didn't agree with, I would just be like, you're wrong. Like, no real, empathy, sympathy. Hey, I know what you feel. I understand. I've been in your shoes. Let me tell you what I found. None of that. It was just like, you're wrong. It's like, just, in your face. And over time, through learning some things, I started to develop some people skills. I think emotional intelligence is a lot tied with people skills. But it allowed me to then sort of pivot into more of a business development role, where I could now actually, when I am talking to potential clients or clients, I can actually understand their needs more. Whereas before, I think it was very commodity based. Now I'm really understanding some of their challenges. I'm some of their struggles, the things that they're dealing with, their needs, their wants, their desires, and so through better emotional intelligence, it's allowed me to be more effective in the business world. Also, as I've been in certain roles where I've built teams, and having that emotional intelligence has allowed me to be more effective in building, growing, and developing teams. So those are some of the effects for me personally that having a better emotional intelligence has benefited me.
Love that. Anybody else want to jump in on this benefit?
Yeah, I do actually. I think, we're talking about business, and I know Josh is going to go here too. When we're talking about business, it is essential to have high emotional intelligence, especially when you are an entrepreneur where you're working for yourself or with yourself, leading others in a more, affiliate type of scenario, or when you are in HR or even in executive levels, it's really important to understand other people. And what I saw is a huge disconnect between upper level management and then, the employees on the lower level. And they didn't have a clear understanding of what it took to get the job done. So a lot of people suffer at their jobs because their higher ups don't know what it takes to have that job, what it takes to do those tasks in order to get the finished product. So whereas, somebody will say, okay, here's your next project, I need it within 20 minutes or within 2 days, but it really takes a lot longer to get it done with other things on your plate. And if you're the type of person to just sit there and go, okay, well, I really want to keep my job, so how can I get this done? Put other things at risk while you're doing this in order to race against the clock, then you're not going to succeed because you won't always be able to sustain that. And when you have the emotional intelligence to be able to sit down and explain why you need more time or why it takes you more time to get something done, because maybe you're pulled in different directions. A lot of us, when we get into that corporate world, a lot of things go on our plate that are not necessarily our jobs, but we take them on anyway. So we need to show that we are able to communicate why, our frustration, the time management issues, all of these different things, that the people who are emotionally intelligent enough to be able to articulate this are often the ones who rise above, often the ones who get promoted, who get, the recognition and the compensation at the end of the day because they were able to put themselves out there. And the other ones that are more suppressed, more afraid, they don't have the confidence to be able to do that. So, when you have the emotional intelligence, it ties into confidence and all of those things that make you shine. And that's what really, elevates you to a whole different level, I think.
I love that. And Tim is backstage. He's asking this question: how does emotional intelligence tie into one's legacy? And I think this is a really big deal because we're expanding our networks. We're networking with people. We want to be better in business. Obviously, we want to be financially successful. But it really comes down to what do you actually care about? What's actually meaningful? And so you can see, we see examples maybe around you. There's people that maybe they're doing well business-wise. They, lead large companies, and I count myself among one of these people. Sometimes I struggle with this too because I don't always connect. I don't have a big friends network that I go out and hang with. Very much a family guy, and I see my family, but sometimes I struggle I'd love to have some of these relationships outside of work, outside of my family. What is the world thinking about you? What does your family think about you? This is where emotional intelligence things, I think, play, having a fancy tombstone because you have the money and, as a leader of business. But if people aren't loving you and don't want to be around you, that's tied to your emotional intelligence, right? These are the things. And when you lead an organization, both as a person that is a good leader, a good manager, but also a good person, right? taken into account, I think you're able to do a lot more and build a lot more. I think that's how you leave a better legacy working on this emotional intelligence piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. I could take that a little bit here. And so, you mentioned tombstone, Cameron, and the question you want to ask yourself is, it's all about the dash, right? Here lies such and such, right? Born on this date, ended on this date. What did the dash? What happened during the dash, right? The time between you were born and when you passed on to the next life. And so to me, it's about legacy. So I love the question, Tim. And to me, legacy, the best version of legacy is mentorship. And who are you mentoring? Who are you bringing along? Who's in your life that you're helping them get into a better place? And so emotional intelligence, I believe, will help you to be a better mentor, a better person, someone who's going to attract people that want to know what you know, that want to, get around you, right? If you're very low on the emotional intelligence side, there's a good chance you're going to probably repel people, right? I think emotional intelligence tends to attract people because you're in a place where you have empathy and you understand people and you understand emotion, both yours and theirs, and how that all plays together, right? So so I think it's very much tied. I think again, for me, my wife and I don't have kids, but we have people in our life that we're blessed that we mentor. And so that's really cool because that's our legacy, right? And so EQ, emotional intelligence, right? Big way of the better you grow that and develop that, the better you'll be able to attract people so that you can make an impact on this world, which is, to me, it's what it's all about, right? It's that dash, right? Is the world better because you were here? That's what I have to say.
Well, I know Vered wanted to jump in. Go ahead, Vered.
Actually, I think Josh did.
Oh, sorry. I see it now. I'm moving too fast. Go ahead, Josh.
That works. Vered, you're welcome to hop in as well. No problem. Yeah, legacy ties into EQ because it's a direct tie-in. They're almost identical because legacy is not about you, right? Legacy, like Steve said, is about everyone else you've impacted. And if any, there's a exercise I like to have my clients do, and it's called Write Your Ideal Eulogy. I want you to, with very specific details, write down what is that mark you left behind. And then there's a specific part I want to bring up because it applies to what we're talking about. Who are two people, make them up, fictional people, who are two people that are going to speak at your funeral, that's going to speak your eulogy, and what are they going to tell, what are they going to say about before they met you and then after they met you, and the impact you had on their life specifically, and then how they took that and paid it forward. And just getting that clarity around that is so powerful. So legacy, EQ, to me, there's really no difference.
Yeah, 100%. I love what you just said. And I think too, for me, it's looking at all of the people that I helped, right? In terms of emotional intelligence coaching and in terms of their business development, taking them from one area to another and seeing them grow and thrive and succeed and have the belief in themselves that they never thought that they did. Maybe it's because, somebody was putting them down. Maybe it was because they were suppressed at work. And again, that emotional intelligence is so important when you're in a leadership role because you have different management styles, but when you're under a manager that micromanages you or doesn't want you to progress, doesn't want you to even surpass them, then there's a problem. And I mean, a great marking of a manager is being able to cultivate leaders and other managers and people that you're bringing to their own level of success. So it doesn't matter where you are. The more of these people that you can get to that point, the better of a manager you appear to be, and you are. So it's all a matter of perspective. But again, that takes that level of emotional intelligence to be comfortable, as we said at the beginning, with who you are in your own skin, to be your authentic you. So for me, having that legacy of leaving behind, successful business owners or successful, corporate types, it doesn't matter where you are. Some people are happy working on their own. Some people are happy working for others. But it doesn't matter as long as you are happy. That's the bottom line. And you're never truly reaching that happiness unless you have that high emotional intelligence.
Love that, Vered. Steve, I think it's really interesting, and because we talk about this a lot, Vered, and you brought up the idea of being a good manager and, what's that manager doing with you? And I think so many of us that have worked in the corporate world, myself included, when you have a manager that isn't about your emotional or intellectual growth, they're just about getting their thing done and protecting not only are they stunting you, but they're stunting themselves, right? And it shows poor emotional intelligence on their part, and it just kills you and stifles you. Because I think, if you're a good manager and you're doing the right thing for a company in general, you're trying to lift everybody up around, because the rising tide lifts all boats, and you grow and you're able to go on to the next position. I know for my entrepreneurs out there, we're in a constant struggle. Who can take over what I'm doing so I can step away and move on to the next thing? Get me out of here. And I think that's a huge difference between like the entrepreneurial world and the corporate world. Sometimes people are just fighting for their budgets, spending all their money so that they can get that same money next year. You get into that zone of comfort, and it plays off across so many different things. You get that fierce territorialness in a meeting, and instead of being emotionally intelligent and helping people out, you're just protecting your territory and reacting, not responding well and processing. There's a lot that goes into that. I love that. Who else wants to jump in here, or should I move on to the next question, Steve?
I'll just say a little something about that. And I know that there's corporate titles, but I really the name manager drives me nuts, because that is the 1950s approach, but not the 21st century approach, or whatever century we're in, I guess. But it's really about leadership. It's about mentorship. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times the reason that we have that type of culture often is because there's an insecurity. And I think, Josh, you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, where people coming from a place of insecurity, and like the camera, like you said, they're trying to protect their turf. But a true leader, somebody who really understands, they want to grow other people around them, because ultimately, if the people around them succeed and they accomplish the mission, they look better. And it is very self-limiting if you're looking to protect turf and keep people down. And so emotional intelligence, I think, is very much tied to that as well, because if you're looking to grow people and help them develop and encourage them, I don't like the carrot and stick methodology, right? I think it's about, why don't you find out what really drives and motivates the person, and then give them the tools, help them to get them the tools to empower them. I remember when I finally started to click with this, and I remember the young lady that was reporting to me, she was afraid to make mistakes. I said, listen, I want you to fail. I want you to make mistakes. I want you to, be able to, it's okay. I'm not going to come down on you. I'm not going to, chastise you. I'm going to encourage you. You're going to learn, right? I've learned, I've heard this phrase, and I live by it, which is, you're either winning or learning, right? Not winning or losing, right? It's winning or learning. And any failure or any challenge is an opportunity to learn. And so somebody with good emotional intelligence in that leadership position, not management position, hopefully, but leadership position, is really going to be able to allow their team to thrive, and ultimately the company thrive. And I love what you said, Cameron, right? You're right, because a rising tide raises all ships. But ultimately, yeah, the goal is, and by the way, there's a great author, John Maxwell, who does a great job talking about leadership. And he talks about, leading up, leading sideways, and leading down, right? Because you can always be in a position of leadership. It doesn't matter where you are in the corporate pyramidal structure, right? But you're always kind of leading, if and sometimes that means you're leading not so good, right? But be conscious of that. So just wanted to share a little bit of that perspective.
Love that. Steve, great job. I got this question from Johnny, and Barrett's going to jump in on it. Can Barrett or Josh share specific examples in the workplace that represent healthy emotional intelligence and unhealthy emotional intelligence? Seeing the contrast may be helpful in understanding how to respond more effectively.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at, a leader, right? So call it a manager or supervisor, whatever, we like to call them leaders because they are leading people. It's all about empowering and uplifting. It's about uniting versus dividing. It's about, taking somebody and building them up rather than tearing them down. And it's about understanding why they might be lacking in a certain area, or for instance, having the ability to recognize a change in someone. So often I'm called in and I'm asked to address an issue with an employee who historically has been doing really well. And then all of a sudden they started to slide. Their performance started to slide. Maybe they were missing some work. They wouldn't come in on time. And so there are challenges there. But instead of letting them go, instead of replacing them, which of course, from a business standpoint, it's not good to have that revolving door. But why not understand what's causing the change? So then that's when I would come in and start educating the leaders on how to identify these issues, how to ask the right questions, how to see if maybe there's something going on at home. Maybe they're having, a breakdown. Maybe they're having some issues with their marriage or relationships or children. Or maybe there's, a medical cause to this. So sometimes someone goes on medication and that affects them. It has side effects. Sometimes they're dealing with other people who are sick, right? So there are all these different things. And many times I've gone in and I was able to save not just that employee's job, but really help them understand how to identify these in future and put some policies and procedures in place to know the right questions, the right tools and resources to have in order to help them. Because it's not about just identifying it. It's that what can we do about it? So having the right ways to go ahead and to point them in the right direction and give them that assistance that they need. But a couple of other, examples would be someone, for instance, who had a language barrier. So she was always quiet at meetings and she didn't speak up. She was afraid to give her input or to give suggestions because she was afraid that she would be judged based on her accent. So it's about figuring out what's holding this person back. And as a leader, you should be able to have that private conversation and say, when we're speaking one-on-one, you're always vocal and you're so great and amazing, giving them that, stepping stone, that edge to say, well, I'm rather shy or I don't feel comfortable, and then giving them the tools again, empowering them to be able to do that. But one case that I do want to say, because I think it's important with all of the highlighting the mental health issues, is that I was working with a client who had somebody who was on the spectrum. This person didn't disclose at the beginning that they were, but it was clearly impacting them, and the entire team was suffering. So I took this person aside and I just had a few conversations with him, and he did disclose to me that he was on the spectrum. I asked him if he would be comfortable with just giving some education around his particular condition to the team, not the whole company, but just to his team so that they can better relate to him. And he was so excited to just get people to understand who he was and where he was coming from, that I did an entire, education session around his particular issue. And after that, the morale of the entire team was completely different. And he was able to communicate with them better. They were able to relate to him, to understand, to give him his space when he needed it, and not to be in his face all the time, which was one of the triggers. So I think just by understanding, just by taking somebody aside and saying, how can I help you, is such a more effective way than berating them.
I love that. I think so often people, wherever they are, they think, I'm going to get somebody that works exactly like me. They're going to do things exactly the way I want. And you don't want that. I think, obviously we would love to have people, especially on the entrepreneurial side. And I think you see it in companies too. I want this person to care as much about this business as I do, especially when it's an entrepreneur. They're like, I want somebody to take owner, but they're not the owner. They're not you. And you don't want them to be because then they're going to start bossing you around, right? And you don't want that. You became an entrepreneur so you could lead a different life. So it's finding the things, the talents, the spirit, the communication. I had somebody who was working in my office and she communicated a lot better with a lot of my staff than I did. So I appreciated that, tried to promote that. What is she good at that I hate doing? Let her do that, right? And you find those balances. And when you have a large organization, that inter-office communication, I love the idea of people educating each other, because then not only are you making the office better, but you are making the world better, and doing what we like to do here, which is being the light. So I like that. Josh, I know you wanted to jump in. We're getting close to the end here, so I think we're going to go into our closing comments. So what are some tangible ways our viewers can increase their EIQ? I know you are passionate about jumping into the office example as well. So maybe you can give us a little bit of that, but also what are some tangible ways our viewers can increase their EIQ? Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, just real quick, what I wanted to say on the is on
Push
the
the wrong
emotional
button.
intelligence side. Oh, that's okay. I'm here. Assume that assume other people have good intentions. Trust that other people have good intentions. And there's a client I work with who was working with a company where they made unlimited PTO, unlimited vacation time. And what they found was people took less vacation time, right? They didn't abuse it. They didn't suddenly, like, people were taking months and months off. People were a little more conservative. People were a little more careful about when they took time off because the company trusted them and therefore they trusted the company. Versus an example that I also heard of where companies would lock the coffee maker because people were drinking too much coffee, instead of having an open conversation as, well, why are people drinking too much coffee? Is there something that we can address here other than saying, I don't trust you, and locking the coffee maker? So just a couple of quick examples. Specific things. So I'm going to come again from a place where more of a business aspect, because this is a little controversial, but I think networking, most of us do networking, it's one of the lowest EQ places that I've seen. And I do a lot of networking because that's where my people are. So one little tidbit is get rid of yams disease. And I'm going to explain it. Yams disease is very simple. It's when you stand up, you're talking to someone in a networking group or socialization, and I am Josh, I am a identity archaeologist, I am in Orlando, I am looking for this kind of prospect, I am. It's so interesting. The number one secret that they don't teach you in business school is that people have to buy you first, and they'll buy your product and service second. And the reverse is true too. And yet when we go network, we stand up and we talk all about ourselves. So how about next time you do a networking event, next time you do your 30-second pitch or presentation or whatever you're doing, avoid the use of the word I am during that time. Talk about your mission. Talk about what pisses you off that day. Talk about what excites you. Talk about why you get out of bed in the morning. Talk about anything. Empathize with those people that you're dedicated to helping. Let them know that you understand what they're going through, and they will listen to you, they will bond with you, and they're going to then want to understand more about your products and services. So there's a quick tip. Is it just one? Is that good?
That's good, Josh. And just let everybody know where they can find you as we're wrapping up here. I'm going to go back to Vered here to get her closing out point on this, but where can people find you?
On all kinds of social media, pretty much every social media at Josh Zepess, or Identity Archaeologist, or at joshzepess.com.
Thank you, Josh. All right, Vered, same question here. What are some tangible ways our viewers can increase their EIQ?
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback on what Josh was saying. I love that. So I say listen more and speak less. Ask the right questions, and always allow people to introduce themselves and to tell you who they are and what they do and what they need before you start talking about how amazing you are. Because you can't possibly know what is good for them unless you understand more about them. And that also, goes into judge favorably. So try to look for the good in other people. I know that it's easier to point out flaws, but when you're looking for points to compliment them on, or to connect with them on, or, to find that common element, when you can relate to somebody, then you can build a relationship. And it doesn't even have to be that you're networking for them to become your client necessarily, but you have to remember that that person has a wide network as well. So leaving that, information with them. Say, who do you know that can benefit from what I do? Or how can I help you? How can I support you? How can I support your network? Those are really great ways to improve your emotional intelligence, because you are starting conversations. And by practicing those conversations, by looking at them, look at the visual cues, right? Their body language, your body language. Everyone wants to talk to someone who's smiling and not being miserable. Try to practice that etiquette, whether in person or online, of giving them, the opportunity to speak, and don't think about responding. Really take in what they're saying so that you can come up with an intelligent way to respond to them. And again, just, think about who you are. Who do I want to be? How can I improve my relationships? How can I become more successful? And figure out the things that are holding you back from that and work on those things. There are emotional intelligence coaches everywhere, but there are also self-help books. Don't let them sit on the shelf collecting dust. Put them into action. So I think that's pretty much my takeaway from all of this, is take some action.
Yes, we all have the self-help books that's sitting on the shelf, not being read, right? Into action. Josh, Barrett, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let Steve close it out, and we'll do our video. We do this countdown to crush it. So we're going to send everybody out there to crush this whole emotional intelligence thing. Having a great week, all that good stuff. Steve, close us out.
Well, it's a great show. And Vera, Josh, great job. You guys did incredible. And I know our viewers are blessed by having you on the show with us. And definitely make sure you connect with Vera and Josh for sure. Incredible people and great resources. And I think, Vera, you might have said it right. God gave us 2 ears and one mouth, right? And that is to listen twice as much as we speak. So one thing I would recommend is just do more connecting with people, right? I'm a big believer in connecting, not networking, but connecting. And I love what Josh said, right? Go out there and make it your mission to add value. Make it your mission to learn the person's story. And if you do those things, you'll see how much you'll be able to grow that emotional intelligence. I think the reason that I had such low emotional intelligence growing up was because I was so isolated. I had very few friends and very, very little interaction with anybody. And the more I've learned to kind of get out of my shell and connect with people, the better I'm able to grow that emotional intelligence, right? So that would be my best takeaway. But this is great, and I know our mission, as Cameron said a few times, is to be the light. And I think we've done a great job in encouraging and uplifting people, and really being that beacon of light. And again, if anyone has had COVID, I can relate now. I got to be honest, I was not one of those. I was one of those guys that said, "Yeah, I'll probably get it, but I'll probably have to have a flu for a couple of days." And that is not what happened for me. So I have a lot of empathy now for people. This virus exists. It's real. And, again, vaccination, not vaccinated, I'm not going to go there, but take it serious, because it was really bad. That death was on my face for about 3-4 days, about a week into it. It was really, really bad. I saw death on my face for sure. So
we're
anyway.
super thankful that you're here, and you're not in the hospital. You're not on a respirator. You're here with us. You're live, kicking and breathing. We're really thankful.
And I appreciate that. And now it's time to really be the light. So let's go out there. Be the light for everybody and continue to crush it. So let's we're going to count down here, and then we'll get everyone's day going for the rest of the day here. So let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Crush it! Go out, have an amazing week, everybody. We will be back next week. We have an amazing show planned for you. Number 36 for us, if you can believe that. 36 shows. The value of self-compassion. We have Whitney Cobrand, Heather Basie, Mariah Edgington, and Hallie Abolio. Be back with us next week. Thank you so much, Josh and Barrett, for being with us. Everybody go out there, have an amazing week, and crush the heck out of it. We love you. Thank you for being a part of this show. You make it what it is. We will see you next week. LinkedIn, we are going to fire up your Monday.
With Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
I am Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
Over the next hour of this Master Connection series, we will take a deep dive into the different ways to connect and network effectively.
See us and hear us right now. So LinkedIn, we are on here. We're getting ready.
Hear from experts along with Steve Spiro, who went from being shy and introverted to the Master Connector.